Welcome back to part two, Sheffield Live TV, our Thursday evening chat show with a difference this week, joined by umpteen guests. In fact, we can probably fit more guests onto the Zoom app than we can actually into the studio, as it turns out. And the only technical incompetent, of course, is me, because my name appears as Alan's iPhone, and I just don't know what to do to change it to my name. Everybody else has done it right, apart from me. Anyway, welcoming back James Gregg, John Dyson, the author of our lowest ever new book on Sheffield Wednesday's direst straits back in the 1970s. Toby Perkins MP, the MP for Chesterfield. We'll talk about highlights shortly. And Carla Ward, United Women's Manager. Start with you. Well, start with you. We can actually possibly get your dishwasher in the background. All legit, you know, anything. Is your dishwasher?
I heard bits and pieces then. You were cutting out.
Oh, right. Okay. Even that goes at times like this. Tell us about your good news this week. Tell us about your UEFA A coaching licence and how much that means to you to get that.
Obviously delighted. It's the award that all football coaches want. It would allow me to manage in the Men's Premier League if I wanted to. But yeah, it's certainly something special for me and something I've been working towards for years. So I got signed off late February, but then the FA, bless them, have only just delivered the certificate. So I was delighted to finally get it yesterday.
Lovely. And I know an awful lot of hard work goes into that, besides doing the job that you're doing. So it must have been really hard to cram that all in, alongside a family as well, with a young daughter, just 10 months old. Yeah,
they're tough. It's 3-day blocks at St George's Park, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. 3 days on the bounce. So it's long, it's tiring, it's draining, but I loved every minute of it. It was so insightful, and you learn so much. And I think even in this last 12 months, how much I've learned and how much it changed the way I certainly do things. So no, it was unbelievable, and it's something that I'll obviously hold with me now for the rest of my career.
Oh, well, congratulations on John. You know, for a Sheffield Wednesday supporter, you know, you're still smiling as things stand. And I know the club have been very receptive to the book, because I think your plan has been to launch it at Owls in the Park. Goodness knows if that will go ahead in June. Everything's up in the air. But they've really supported you with it. I suppose in a way, it kind of says to supporters, look, you might think this is bad, but have a look at this.
In a way, I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can look at it and say it was terrible. Right? The 2 goals in 17 games, 36 games with between away wins, attendances down to 6,000-7,000. There's all sorts of ways you can think of it as being a terrible time. But yes, the club have been really helpful, and many of the players and the management at the time were particularly kind of almost nostalgic about the period. And perhaps more importantly, I suppose, were many of the fans I spoke to, which seems a little bit of a roundabout way of looking at things. You know, the worst ever time for the club, but many fans remember it really fondly, and that's kind of what the book aims to reflect, really.
It's strange, isn't it, James, to be nostalgic about a terrible time like that? But funnily enough, I am, because I'm a Sheffield Wednesday supporter. I'm totally impartial, and Chesterfield. That was the start of my career, you know, and I remember covering some of those games, seeing 9 games at home without Sheffield Wednesday scoring. You can't imagine the Blades ever going to run like that, James, can you?
No, but you know, I think a lot of my mates, you know, that they kind of look back on that Nigel Adkins season now, weirdly quite fondly. You know, in League One, it was like the lowest finish for 30 years as a Blade supporter. I think because of then what came after it, and I think that, you know, if you do lose a couple of games on the spin, well, you know, at least, you know, it kind of puts things in perspective a little bit, doesn't it? So I think Wednesday fans, they will probably look back on that and think, yeah, but we had a really good period after that. And it's almost, it's a bit like therapy in a way, to kind of think back on that and look back and realise that things actually could be a bit worse. And especially with all this going on as well at the moment, it's actually probably highlighted even more that, God, do you remember that? We thought it was the worst thing ever. Well, now we haven't got any football, and prior to that, Wednesday was struggling a little bit. So actually, it's probably a really good time to bring a book out like that, I think, John. I wish you all the best with it. It's going to be really, really good, to see how people receive it.
Yeah, indeed.
Thanks,
Toby.
I've just had nothing but positive feedback, Alan. As I say, ex-players, management at the time, Len Ashurst, Tony Toms, they both loved their time at Hillsborough. Willie Henderson was I can't think of a better word than he loved it. He was very, very positive about his time. And the fans, it's a very, very positive reaction so far for something that was so poor on the pitch at times.
Len Ashurst, he terrified me at the time. Absolutely terrifying man. Used to take the pee out of me and all sorts of stuff. A word out of place at an interview and he ranted on you. And just a few years ago now, I happened to be sitting next to him at a dinner. And he turned out to be a really nice old guy, Almost
he was absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
I was a little bit scared ringing him for that same reason, because some other players told me they were absolutely, I can't think of a polite way, they were very scared of him, and I was a little bit nervous of ringing him for that same reason. But he could not have been more helpful.
No,
really nice guy.
He must have changed. Age mellows.
Yeah, mellows.
Mellows all of us. Carla, is anybody terrified of you?
I would like to think no, but listen, as a manager, you're always going to get people that like you and some that don't. I think that's part of management. So I wouldn't like to think that anyone would be terrified of me, though.
No. I think you could probably dish it out. And you've not had occasion to do that too often because your results have been so good. But I
could be surprised. Could be surprised.
Yeah.
No.
Let's bring Toby back in and talk about what the season's meant for you as a long-time Blade and how much you've enjoyed it. And even though none of us want to be selfish about what the truncation of the season has meant, you wouldn't be human if you weren't a bit devastated inside that, at such a time, we're all brought to a halt like this.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the only Blade saying, why couldn't this have happened when we had Nigel Adkins as the manager? I wouldn't have minded that season finishing in the middle of March, but, definitely it's been the best season I've experienced as a United fan. I think just about any of us who weren't around in the Tony Curry era would say this is as good as it's been, not just the performances, even though they've been amazing, but the way the team has played, the way that it's United have been sort of the talk of the Premier League, I think, in terms of the achievement to get promoted and be there above Spurs in the league, going for Europe, unbeaten away from home with the exception of Liverpool and Man City. There's so much you can say about the way the side's played, and so yeah, it's been quite incredible. And as James was just reflecting there, I think it's not many years ago that United were at such a desperate time. Right up to the moment before Wilder took over, we had that dreadful season under Nigel Adkins. In fact, the first time I came on your programme was the day after we'd shipped 4 goals at home to Colchester, I think it was, and it's a totally transformed club in every single way since then. So it is particularly bitter that this sort of suspension of football should come when every United fan was really looking forward to this last 2.5 months. Whatever the outcome was, we were going to be playing Wolves and Chelsea and Spurs, Man United with European qualification up for grabs, and it couldn't have been a more exciting period, really.
Toby, I mean, it's a challenge for which no manager could prepare. This is way off the script, isn't it? And even a manager as resourceful as Chris Wilder is having to agonise and deliberate on how on earth to cope with that. I mean, if anybody can, he can, is my sort of thinking on it.
Well, absolutely, but I think it is incredibly difficult to keep the momentum going. I think that at this stage, no one knows. I mean, if football was able to come out and say, right, we're going to, start the season again on the 6th of June or whatever, you've at least got a period to plan for. But at the moment, we're simply sat there saying, well, we know it's not going to be on before the 30th of April, and who knows after that. And so, in terms of whether this is some kind of pre-season, or whether players should be sort of ready to be back at a week or two's notice, it's very, very difficult for managers to kind of know what to say to the players in terms of whether they should be keeping the engine ticking over or whether they should be resting.
What do you tell your players, and how much contact are you having, Carla, with the Sheffield United women's team?
So they all have their own home programs. So our performance coach has given them both running and conditioning programs, as well as obviously body weights program. I have regular contact with them, just because at the minute I think it's quite important to sort of even check in on how they are, how they're getting on, because you never quite know how each individual is coping with it. But equally, there's just not a lot we can do. We're in regular dialogue with the FA, sort of twice a week at the minute. We're currently working through a set of scenarios of the possibilities and the outcomes and the timescales of potentially getting back. And it's so hard at the minute because you just don't know. One scenario goes, two scenario goes. You don't know when you're going to get to the end, and it's a case of there's no more scenarios left. So it's tough, but I just keep saying to the players, you've got to get yourself ready. You've got to keep yourself ticking over. You've got to be ready if called upon. And that's tough, especially when there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, and the main thing for all of us is to be safe and well. I mean, nobody wants to, everybody knows what the government's message is, but I think maybe all of us on this show would repeat it and say, for goodness sake, don't go out unless it's absolutely necessary, because we owe it to each of us, don't we? All of us to abide by that. Do you think the public are?
I think that's right, Alan. But I do think that there is a confusion here because when the Prime Minister was on the television, he said you should only go to work if your work is essential. But he was also saying to businesses, we want you to carry on. We're not paying you not to be at work. And so there are many businesses, whether they be double glazing firms, whether they be axle grinder firms, whether they be gas meter producers, and all of those are live examples that I've had, where they're saying, well, as far as we're concerned, you've got to still come to work. And then this then poses questions for football. To what extent, if those businesses are economic entities, but they're not essential to surviving coronavirus, and they're being asked to carry on, why is football not also being asked to carry on at some level? So I think that the message we would give to people would be absolutely stay at home. At the same time, if their boss is saying I need you in at work at 9 o'clock, otherwise you're sacked, then they're being dragged out to, even though it might not be essential, and the government, we need business to carry on. So it is very complicated, and football will have to negotiate this really difficult area just the same as everyone else.
Yeah, but James, of course, you're carrying on broadcasting. You, I mean, as we are attempting to here, which again, I suppose, is an essential service for not so much us, but information and entertainment to a degree.
I mean, yeah, it is, but I mean, it doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously, I had people taking the mickey out of me sort of all week when I sort of said, "Oh, I'm actually on the key workers list," and they're kind of going, "What?" I was going, well, yeah, I mean, I suppose, the public service broadcasting is, I mean, look, primarily I talk about sport. There's no sport to talk about. I've been reading the news and I've been doing all sorts on, I'm doing Radio 2, World Service, 5 Live, Radio 4. I'm doing so much when I'm in. There's barely anybody in the building at the moment. So you've got to be, you've got to be willing to be hands-on. You've got to, transferable skills and all that kind of stuff. Is it an essential service? I mean, it's not like the NHS, is it? But I suppose that people get their news, don't they? And people get information, and that's kind of where they're getting it from. And more, the stations are sort of just all going down one route. A lot of them are sharing the news and the content and sharing programs now, particularly on the BBC network. So, yeah, I mean, look, the measures, as you can imagine it to be, but, ridiculous, really, really tight measures, hand gels everywhere, tape on the floor. You're not getting in within 5 meters of anybody, let alone 2. So it's, you don't feel unsafe going in. You just perhaps feel a little bit guilty because you're not saving lives by being on the radio at all. But it is what it is. I mean, again, as a freelancer, it's causing a few problems for me because it's kind of thinking, well, you know, obviously there's no sports to be broadcast, so, you know, all these different pay things, you know, there's a lot, but you know, I'm in a good position. That I can still work at the moment. So, and it's, you know, there's a lot of people who've got it worse off. So the way I'm just going to keep going until I probably get furloughed, which is
my
fine.
work's gone. All my work is completely gone
Yeah.
as a total task. Hopefully, temporarily. Don't feel too sorry for myself. Feel sorry for those earlier in their careers, and hopefully help is on the way. Toby, as promised in part one, let's have a look at the non-league scene. You know, the FA is effectively closing all leagues below the National League structure. I think that's 91 leagues in all. And the same in the women's game below the Super League and the Championship. There's a big protest on this, backed by MPs. Before we talk specifically about Chesterfield's situation in the National League, what do you make of that? Do you think the FA are wrong? Do you think they'll be persuaded to widen the options there, or what?
I mean, I recognise it's an incredibly difficult choice. I think if you look at the National League as a case in point, you've got, you know, in the event that 4 teams are relegated, I think you've got one team that have got 2 games in hand and was 3 points behind, one team that got 1 game in hand and was 1 point behind, and one team who was 4th bottom but had played more games. Who do you relegate under those circumstances? So I think, you know, I do recognise the sort of incredible difficulty of that sort of choice. But I think to say to footballers, to fans, that everything you've witnessed up to now was for nothing and we're going to cancel it all and make it null and void after 30-odd games of the season, I think that's incredibly difficult too. I mean, I think, you know, if I was to try and come up with some equally inelegant conclusion, I might have suggested the best way of doing it is attempting to play so that everyone's played the same number of games and then accept that was the season. I think that would have been a slightly better outcome. So you play those games that should have been, that were scheduled to be played earlier but haven't, and then sort of finish from there. But I'd also recognise in terms of non-league, you know, their finances are incredibly precarious, and I think that there was a consideration about wanting to be in a position where they were carrying on employing people for several months without any income coming in, and I'm not privy to that sort of information. So as a sort of kind of sporting solution, I would prefer some kind of line in the sand at which you say what's happened previously is the end of the season, rather than just cancel the season as null and void. But it may be that was sort of impractical. So I have to accept people have greater knowledge than me on that.
Yeah, the National League have just pitched it right, because all you can say is, well, we're suspending the season indefinitely. That's the National League's position. Chesterfield, you know, have squeaked out, fortunately, a great one under John Pemberton, of the relegation places. But a wider issue, obviously, in the background, and I know that you've been in touch with people involved in this, has been this long-awaited and much-needed transfer of ownership there. The Supporters Trust were on the brink, I think, of completing that. And then, of course, came the lockdown measures. So where does that stand at the moment, Toby?
I think there's a lot of optimism that will still happen. I think it can only happen after there's certainty about the lockdown and the sort of the financial implications of this period. I think it's fortunate in a way, from the perspective of the Supporters Trust, that didn't happen. You know, the takeover didn't happen a month or two before this, because, you know, I think the relatively limited resources that they have to run the club would have been, you know, very stiffly tested by having several months without any football when they were expecting income. So I think that we need to get beyond this period. But I think once that's happened, there is a lot of optimism that the trust will still take over and the Dave Allen era will come to a close.
In the meantime, though, Dave Allen is continuing to foot the bill to keep the club treading water.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think there is a request that's gone in from the National League to government for a sum of money to keep all of those clubs in existence. And there's a real threat that if government don't make a contribution, that you're going to see a large number of those National League clubs that are, funded pretty precariously, really severely financially tested. And I think we do need to recognise that whilst I think it's entirely fair to say that some of the reasons why the club has lost money sit at Dave Allen's door, he has been willing to continue funding it. The club is in existence despite losing £1 million and more every year, because Dave has continued writing those checks. So, that is a part of the context, whilst also, when the book about Chesterfield's lowest ebb is written, they will be writing about right now. It has literally never been as bad as this in the club's entire history in terms of their performances on the pitch, and clearly, those the fingers will be pointed at those same people, the same person who's writing those checks.
Yeah, it's not been about financial backing, which has been excellent. It's been purely and simply decision-making and poor decision-making. But hopefully a brighter future awaits for Chesterfield, for Sheffield Wednesday too. It's not been pleasant, but maybe this pause, this hiatus in everything and not normal life can ultimately in some way help Sheffield Wednesday, Gary Monk and the players to come together and, if and when the season resumes, play a hell of a lot better than they have been doing.
I certainly hope so, Alan. It seemed to be there were lots of people working against each other. Sorry, Alan, you faded away a little bit on the screen there. I certainly hope so. Didn't seem the fans, the management, the chairman, it didn't all seem to be tied together the right kind of way in the last few weeks before the hiatus. So maybe this little pause might just bang a few heads together and get people pointing in the right direction again.
Yeah, thanks, John. And for Sheffield United, both the men's team and the women's team, somehow, Carla, to recover that incredible momentum that you had going.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but listen, we're in the same boat as everybody else. I don't think there can be any complaints around that. The interesting part will be how long that reboot period is of getting the players ready to go again. So that's going to be key, and I think on the lips of every manager, I think up and down the country. But I mean, from the male side of the game, I think obviously, I know, John, you won't like the sound of this, but obviously Chris and the boys are on the cusp of European football, so we want to get it done. Of course we do. We want to make sure that obviously Sheffield United get the rewards for football they've played this season.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, everybody. James, come to you first as we close this historic show. Thanks for keeping that certain shirt just behind you and out of shot. It's just
down there. I got it out during the advert break, Bigsy. So it's just missed out. You just missed out on it.
Yeah, I can just see a little fraction of it just in the corner there. All right. Thanks very much. Well, I tell you what, it hasn't been so bad, this, has it? It's not textbook broadcasting, but I think it might just about qualify for us doing it again next week, maybe. Thanks to everybody for taking part. John Dyson, good luck with that book. I hope it's not delayed for too much longer, Our Lowest Ebb. Thank you, Toby Perkins MP, for another appearance, and also Carla Ward. You've made a couple of orthodox appearances previously. I don't think any of us have ever done anything quite like this before. Thank you for enduring it. Thank you for watching with us. Thanks again to Greg Burak, Sheffield Live's production manager, for bringing this all together. Thank you for watching. Hope to rejoin you, or rather, maybe live next week. See you then.